Okay, so this is going to be the first video that I'm going to shoot for MTH service, and the purpose of these videos is to explain to everybody how to service an engine. I will also get into in later videos operating engines, running DCS, running Wi-Fi, going through the wiring of engines, everything you would need to know how to fix an engine, how to run an engine properly, and how to service an engine to keep it running. So this first video is going to be lubricating engines. It's a pretty straightforward operation. The first thing that you want is you're going to want a nice light machine oil. We offer it here. It comes in part of a kit, and it's item number 30-50051. I'll put that down below the video for the link. The second is you're going to want a decent grease. We also include that in that same maintenance pack. But what we use in service is actually just good old Lucas red and tacky number 2 that you can pick up at any auto parts store. The only problem that you find is you got to get a tube that's small enough that you can get into the service areas of the engine. So let's start with that right now. And in order to service to grease the gears, and I'm talking about the drive gears. This happens to be a diesel. And so you've got 2 trucks, and it doesn't matter if it's a 6-wheel truck or a 4-wheel truck. It's going to be the same. So what you want to do is there's a screw right here. Just simply remove the screw. And one of the things that you want to do is you do want to, if you're going to do a lot of servicing on your own engines, is you want to pick up one of these nice foam cradles. You can get them, you can find them online. Bunch of different places have them. They are invaluable. They will keep your engine safe. They won't break detail parts, and it goes a long way in saving your engine. So now we've got the screw removed, and if you look down here, you can see that we now have a hole with which to get to the gear. The gear comes from, because we're looking at the bottom of the engine, the motor is coming up and the gear is pressed on the bottom of the engine, and it comes up towards the camera here. So if I lift this straight up, you can see that I'm actually removing the truck from the motor. Now the problem with doing it this way, as I'm having trouble with it right now, is that the motor mount will move. So now you can see that you have the motor sitting there. Ideally what you want to do is try and not move the truck. I'm moving it just to show you so that you could see how it actually goes together. So you have the gear right here. This black piece is the motor mount, and then you have the truck. And the truck just fits right over here, and then you have this area right down here where the screw is. Okay, so what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to loosen this screw. Don't remove it all the way, especially when it's sitting in a cradle like this. What will happen is this screw right here is what holds the truck to the motor mount. And if you remove it completely, the motor will want to fall back into the model. So what you can do is, once you have it like this, is to just lay it on its side, and you want to make sure that you protect these. So you want your bench to have something soft. This is a ESD matting, so it's rubberized and it's pretty soft. Is to then completely remove the screw. And now you have your motor and you have your truck assembly, and you can see inside here, you can see the gearing inside the truck. So this worm gear engages that helical, or the helical engages the truck gear, and you now have motion. Well, you want to make sure that that's nice and greased. This one happens to be greased pretty well. so I don't really need to add any more to it. When you go to reassemble it, set it on its side, and then you can tighten this all the way up while it's on its side if you want. So when we have it apart like that, if you take a little bit of grease and you just run it on those gears, and you can put it down when you have the truck laid off to the side, you can put the grease in to the little area where the helical gear engages with the drive gear on the truck. You don't need to over grease it. You certainly don't want to glob way too much grease in there. You don't want to come shooting out. And you want to use a decent grease. Like I said, we use in the service, we use the Lucas Oil Red and Tacky. It's a nice stable grease, and it won't disintegrate and get really runny and start running out all over your layout, all over the engines. So the same thing applies to the other truck. Screw just like this truck. Be right here. Same process, and then just put the grease in there. This is something you probably want to do. It just depends on how much you run your engine. If you're running them all the time, all year long, it's something you're going to want to do probably at least every 6 months or every year, depending on how much you run them. So that is how you grease a diesel truck. Again, it doesn't matter if it's a 6-wheel or a 4-wheel truck; they're all pretty much the same. So while I have this engine laying on its back, I'm also going to show you the oiling points for it. You'll notice that you have the drive gears along here on the sides of the trucks. So what you want to do is take your oil, and again, if you use the stuff out of our maintenance kit, it works really, really well because it's got a nice fine needle point on there. And all you want to do is just run a couple of drops along the gears. On both ends, on both trucks. And you don't typically want to put grease on these gears, and the reason you don't want to do that is that this area is attractive to all kinds of ballast and landscaping, little trees and stuff like that. It'll get caught in there. It's less likely to do that when you just put a little bit of oil in there. It also reduces the noise on the engine when it's running. Likewise, if you've got in here, you've got brass bearings that are inside right here and right there where the axles go through the trucks. That's also a point. You want to put a drop of oil in there. And again, both trucks. And if you have a 6-wheel truck, it depends on the engine. Sometimes the one set of axles will be blind. They'll just be plastic without any gearing. They won't even have a flange on it. And those, the axle just goes straight through the truck, and you can just put a drop of oil right where that axle goes through the truck. They're pretty loose inside there anyway. Where you're really wanting to focus your attention is where you have gearing, metal-to-metal contact, and that applies to the bearings that are in the truck, and it applies to the gearing that you see here on the side. So on this diesel, we've got it pretty well lubricated now. So we've got the gears, we've got the bushings, or the bearings, we've got the on both sides. You can put grease down in where the motor contacts the truck, and you now have an engine that is lubricated. This is the diesel engine that's lubricated. So what I'm going to do is switch over and go to a steam engine. And for this example, I happen to have an NWJ, and in these steam engines, it's a little bit easier because, especially the bigger Premier ones, you have points in here, or cast right into the chassis. It says grease, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4 points to grease. What those are the axles, and so what you're doing is you're just putting a little bit of grease on the axles, and same thing. So I'll pull one of these screws open so that you can see. And if you can see down in there, it might be a little bit difficult. Try and bring this closer to the camera. And if you can see down in there, there is just a little spot. Now you would need something in order to get the grease down in there. You need something that's got a much, a finer point like the needle point on this, except in the maintenance kit, the 30-50051, the grease tube has a pretty fine point on it, so if you clip off just the end, you can get it down in there and just shoot a little bit of grease. Again, you don't want to over grease these. There's no need to. They're already greased at the factory, and that applies whether it's a steam or a diesel. They're pre-greased at the factory, and so you normally don't have to do it until after you've run it for a while. And again, your lubricating period is going to apply. It's only going to be as often as you run the engine, right? So in other words, if you're running them all the time, you're going to want to grease them more. In terms of oiling them, you can oil them a little more often than you grease them. The grease just doesn't wear out. It's not being flung around and flung off of the engine like oil is on the external side of the wheels. So you have 4 grease points on this particular engine, so you can go ahead and open up those and shoot a little bit of grease into each one. Again, don't over grease them. For the oiling points on this, on a steam engine, you've got all this running gear along here. And one point that I did neglect on the diesel that I'll show you on the steam engine is right here at these little points where the roller is connected. Just put a drop of grease in there, and that will ensure that that rolls nice and smooth. The other oiler points, you have, this is spring loaded, and you can see that there's a little bit of oil in there. I always put just a little bit in here. That keeps that. You can put on this part, you can actually put a little bit of grease in here if you want. You can see that they have a light coating of grease on them already. So you can use, just a little dab of grease and just run it around that. If you want to remove the screw, you can. It makes it a little bit easier. You can access the whole area. That just keeps the pilot truck rotating smoothly. So as far as the oiling goes, you can see the axle running right through here in the pilot truck. And if you just push the wheels to one side, put a drop of oil there, push it to the other side, put a drop of oil there, same thing on the other ones. And if you've got a 2-wheel, of course you're only going to have one axle. And then same thing on the trailing truck back here. Where these go into what would be the journal bearings. And then again back here, you can put a little bit of grease on this for the trailing truck to slide nice and evenly across there, and same thing right up here. Again, you can remove that screw right there, this one here, and you'll be able to put just a little dab of grease is all you'll need. So as far as the wheels go, the main driver wheels, every point basically where you have metal to metal contact, and I put just a drop there, 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 inside here. And then each one of these points that are pinned together, I put a little bit on here. And again, it's both sides. So you'll have, because you have running gear on both sides of a steam engine. You do not want to over oil these, again, because when you put any kind of oil, a lubricant like that, it attracts dirt and dust and grime and ballast gravel and your favorite scenic tree. It picks up all that stuff. So on the boiler, we've got the pilot truck, the main drive wheels, the trailing truck, and we have lubricated all of those points where you have basically metal to metal contact. That's what you want. And again, you want to be careful that you do not over oil. You don't want the oil running off of it and dripping off of the engine. That's not good. If you need to take it out of its cradle and get it to a side where you can get at some of the other running gear, by all means do that. And again, you want to make sure that you're hitting all of the metal to metal contacts on there so that you've got a nice light coating of oil on that engine. So the next one we'll do will be the tender for this particular J engine. So here is the tender for that same J-class engine that we just oiled and lubricated. And again, same deal, same oil. And just like the leading and the trailing trucks, you're going to put a drop of oil right where the axle points come into the sides, the truck sides. This one happens to have a 2 6-wheel trucks on a tender, so we have 6 axles to deal with. So there is the lubricating points on a regular diesel, the lubricating points on a Premier steam. Your Rail King steam are going to be very, very similar. They're just not as big. They just don't have as many lubrication points. And then lubricating a tender as well. So that is how you lubricate a diesel and a steam engine. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them below the video. And this, like I said, this will be the first video of hopefully many, many videos helping everybody out that I possibly can to learn how to service their engine correctly. Take care.